when it comes to sharing my story, I think it's what I'm trying to do is show other people that their story is impactful as well. My story has been the axiom of building the business. People really resonate with that. It makes it real. It makes it human. And oftentimes I run into people like, you've got incredible things to say. And I'm like, why aren't you saying it? And like, well, because no one's going to care about my story. I'm like, no, 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 no. You think they're not going to care. Actually, if you don't share it, you're actually doing them a disservice and they could be going in the opposite way in their life until they heard that one word from you or that one phrase from you that resonated with them in the moment. And then they turn a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. And so I encourage everyone to share their story vulnerably. And you hit on a lot of the kind of darkest moments just in a few sentences there. So we can elaborate as much as you want on that. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I mean, to those who much is given, much is expected, and you've had a lot of success. And from the very beginning, it's always been about other people. It's always been looking for an opportunity to pour into somebody's life that's needed help. And you really, truly are a servant leader, and you've been passionate about that since I first met you the very first day, looking at a rental space. So if you don't mind, Devin, we always start on the home front with setting the foundation by going back into your background. So as much or as little as you care to share, we would love to hear about how you grew up.
I was traveling the country with my mother out of the back of her purple Saturn and living in different apartments, rental houses from Michigan to Mississippi to Arizona to California to Washington State, back to Arizona, back to California before we actually landed in Michigan. And so to me, as I go rewind and think about how did my personality form, like who am I, right? Is a question you start to ask yourself, I think, when you're on the cusp of maturity. And that doesn't have an age, right? Maturity is just a mindset. It's a state of being where you take responsibility for your own actions. And so I wanted to start to go backward and think about how come when people meet me today that they always say that was a extremely positive interaction. They always say, I never had an awkward moment around Devin. They always say, he made me feel so welcome and warm and comforted. And he's an intense guy, but that didn't scare me. It was like a loving intensity, right? And I always try to, when I hear that over and over and over, you try to go back and, I really believe that we have a memory to play that tape back, right? That's one of the functions of the memory is to reconcile with the past in a way. And so, the first 7 years of my life, I think created extroversion to the degree that that's not inherently part of your DNA or a part of, your biology, your personality. When you're born, like whatever you're born into, I largely believe that we're born with a clean slate and that the life experiences that we have shape us. And, those moving around and, being somebody that was switching schools every 3 months in my formative years, I think allowed me to have that extroverted bone to where, I can go into any room, any environment, any setting, feel comfortable and make my presence known, right? And be a value adder or a contributor to whatever group that I'm in. And so, yeah, I did that. And then once my mom and dad, as you mentioned, the reason we left Battle Creek, Michigan, where I'm born and raised is because, they're both independently chaotic people. And then when you put these two independently chaotic people together, it was like the closest thing that I could imagine to World War III, where every week, put in perspective, by the time I was 18, um, I had 50 plus criminal charges that were filed for both my mom and my dad. And so I would see the police like every weekend. It's like, oh, I'll be sitting in my room playing Nintendo and, oh, there's the blue lights again. Right. And it wasn't even a big deal. It didn't become and so they got back together at about 10 years old. We moved back to Michigan. And from that moment forward, I mean, it was insane. I mean, I can remember when I was 12 years old, this story I think will really help people get a snapshot of really who I am and where I come from. So living in a house where, the rent is, a couple $100, $150 a month, you don't exactly have the thickest walls or the best finishes, right? So my room is right next to this set of stairs that's right next to the kitchen. And so every night there's at least an argument. Oftentimes it escalates to something much more violent. And as a young boy, listening to your mother, in effect, be physically abused. She wasn't an angel, but no woman deserves to be physically abused. At 12 years old, I got sick of it. I think it was part of I was hitting puberty. It's like, I'm just sick of this. And so I tried to step in the middle. And when I tried to step in the middle, I remember taking a shot right to the temple and then waking up about 20 minutes later in a blanket with a rather good looking police officer wrapping her arm around a young boy. And I'll never forget that moment. And, her just saying like, hey, it's okay. They're not going to hurt you anymore, basically is what she said. And so, that's pain, right? This is why I tell this story, because pain is what molds us. The pain that I was forced to go through as a young boy made me become a man much sooner. I had to be